My aunt asked was, is he any good?
Were you born this small? And they'll literally put their fingers like that.
God, all you guys do is moan.
2 days in the Cotswolds to figure it out.
Task for the next 48 hours. We are going to achieve this. Today's guest, Cait Hellyer, is a disability content creator and model who happens to be a little person. It was a great conversation to have today with Cait, particularly surrounding some of the similarities between the way we grew up and the people we are now. And it was also great to talk about what advice we'd give our younger selves. And I think there's a lot you guys can take away from this episode, so really do hope you enjoy it. So please sit back, relax, and enjoy. Welcome back to the Not Quite Pod. Today we've got Cait with us. Cait, did you want to quickly introduce yourself, let everyone know who you are and what you're doing here?
So, hi, I'm Cait, also known as a slice of Cait on the internet. I'm a blogger, model, freelancer, writer, you name it. I probably do all of it. So yeah, that's me, and I'm here talking to Charlie today about anything and everything about my life, pretty much.
Yeah, we're going to deep dive into Cait's life, what it's like to be Cait. So for those that don't know you, give us a bit of a snapshot of your life this far. Now, that sounds like a really heavy question, but I basically just mean take us on the journey as to where you are now, what you're working on, and things like that.
So unless you go to my socials, as I'm sat here, it's not visible, but I have dwarfism. I have achondroplasia, which is the most common form of dwarfism. My parents do not have the condition. I am the only one out of my whole family, every generation, every cousin line. It's just me. So I stand out at a family party and I can't get away with anything. So that's why I started my blog, which is A Slice of Cait. I love fashion, but it's so difficult to be able to find the correct clothing and clothing that is age appropriate when you are the size of a 7-year-old at 22 years old.
Yeah.
So I started a blog linking like all the bits I found in shops so people could avoid like having to go out and find a top with like Peppa Pig on or like really sparkly Peppa Pig shoes. I'm using that because that's the age category, but 7-year-olds love.
Yeah.
So
yeah. I completely get it.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting as well because you're the second person of short stature that I've had on the podcast, and that is literally one of the biggest challenges. Well, from what I've heard, one of the biggest challenges is finding clothes and things that fit you correctly, and also, as you say, are just styled appropriately and not bright pink, bright blue, got dinosaurs all over, or as you say, got Peppa Pig all over them. It baffles me that no one's like. I know there are very few brands out there that actually cater for you guys, and that's mad. Absolutely, it's mind bending.
It's crazy because it's like we're 1 in 25,000 people.
Yeah.
And we're not the only people to be short-statured. There are other conditions, other disabilities, whatever you name it, that are short-statured in many different ways. So there's a massive market out there.
Yeah. I mean, I'm as well. I don't by no stretch of the imagination short stature, but by traditional standards, I'm not tall, and I face enough issues finding stuff that fits me correctly, particularly because being a wheelchair user, we have really big top halves and really little bottom halves. So like, it doesn't quite the logistics don't match.
No.
Like it's like getting a shirt that fits me is practically impossible. My neck is just too big, but then my torso is not long enough. But then my chest is too wide, shoulders are too. It's a whole game. So I don't have the same scenario, but I can completely relate and feel some of your pain.
Exactly, and nobody and no body is average. There's no like one size fits all at all. So the fact that we're all still going through this and everybody goes through it.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, so what have you seen, obviously, with your work in the fashion industry and doing work with different brands? What have you seen in terms of the growth towards supporting people with short stature?
Well, firstly, there are your specialist brands. So I'm going to plug this until probably the day I die. Shemaya J Fashion. What a queen. Literally saved our lives. And she's the first short-statured fashion brand to cater for us. She's done her research properly. She's asked us what we wanted, and she's provided. And to wear her clothes is so special because it's what I envisioned myself in growing up, but could never find.
Yep.
So
Yep.
for her to step out and do that, especially as an average height person too, she's just done it properly. She hasn't gone, oh, they might like this. I'm going to try and empathise as much as possible, although it's impossible to empathise in any situation.
Yeah.
And she asked us. She did just think for us, which is so lovely. And there are other brands out there as well. Possibly some that I need to explore. I think there's about 3 or 4 on the market at the moment. And that's only in like the last 5 years, basically since I started blogging.
Yep.
And then your high street shops that are more sort of accessible. They do petite ranges now, which is much better than it used to be. So between those two, you're pretty much sorted. Whereas 5-10 years ago, it was almost impossible.
It's mad. I just can't, like, you would have thought that someone would have done more in this space. It's just mad that no one's really tapped into it. Plus, as well, as you say, it's nice to hear that sorry, I didn't catch the name of the brand that you mentioned. The one at the beginning?
Shemaya J Fashion, that one.
Cool, that one's a fun one to say. Wait, you got to say that slower. How'd you say it?
Shemaya J Fashion.
Shemaya J Fashion.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yes.
Good. That was actually, now I think of it, they messaged me the other week about something to do with fashion. I'm like, you know, when I saw the name, but didn't, again, I had the same scenario. So for we weren't recording at the time. I'm dyslexic and my brain couldn't figure out whether Cait was Kate or Cat. And I was like, I'm going to have to just ask. So prime example there of like my dyslexic brain just not computing what a word would sound like. So there you go. We're all human. What was I going to say? So it's quite nice to see that they've actually considered consultancy. And this is something I campaign for all the time. Too many disabled brands are run by able-bodied folk. And there's nothing wrong with that. They're like, my sister and stuff can probably vouch for things for people in wheelchairs and everything else. But you really need to hear it from the horse's mouth. Like, we're the ones that actually go through it every day, know what we need, know what we want. And also that way, if you most brands that do well are the ones that play to their market. They ask what their market want and they go, okay, we'll create that then. It's not rocket science.
No, it's not. And by the way, I think Shemaya does menswear. So if you want to jump on that, I highly, highly recommend you do.
I'll check it out. As I say, I think she messaged me the other week. As I say, I didn't realise that was how you pronounced it, so I didn't connect the two.
No worries. There's also the way that they design the ruts versus somebody in a wheelchair. You need to think about it so differently. Like you said, like you need to consult the two groups very differently. Some brands assume all disabilities are the same, which is ridiculous. I'm sorry. Like, why is that still happening in 2023?
Yep.
Like,
completely agree.
No dwarf is the same as the next dwarf. I'm going to say that word because that's how I categorize myself. And no wheelchair user is the same as another wheelchair user.
No.
So brands need to work on that. Brands need to work on individuals so they can provide as a whole and not just assume.
Yep. Completely agree. Like the other thing as well is there are areas that you need to be looking for each category of disability.
Yeah.
So, like with someone in a wheelchair user, you're looking at how it fits you around the torso. As I said earlier, it's really tricky because you often, if you're in my situation, you're like. Someone described me perfectly once before. They described me like a tube of toothpaste. The further down my body you go, the smaller it gets. So, and that actually stuck, which I'm amazed by. But basically, it means that getting clothes that fit because of my neck size, chest size, shoulder size is impossible. Like, the only jeans that don't look like flares on me are spray-on jeans. And they are the only ones that don't look like. Although flares are coming back in, so like I might be okay. But back in the day when the skinny jeans were life, it was impossible to find ones that fit me properly. But as we say, it's that whole thing of looking at disabilities as like almost specific cases of what are the pain points. Like one thing that people don't realize with wheelchair users, one of the biggest issues is like your clothes will just drag on the side of your wheel and you won't intentionally you can't intentionally fix it, but it's because they protrude onto the wheels, even if you've got mud guards, everything else. So you just end up with a random bit that's like black or brown or whatever it's gone through your wheel. The worst thing you can do is summertime and wearing a white shirt. I went out the other day in a white linen shirt and it literally looked like I'd been dragged through a hedge backwards by the time I got out of my chair. It was terrible. And like like I say, it's the whole thing of how do people still think that every disability is the same? Or my personal favorite is the average Joe seems to think that every disabled person knows every disabled person. And it doesn't work like that.
Yeah. I get asked if I know so and so who is 3'6" tall from Scotland. And I'm like, no. I don't even know half of my family, let alone probably, I don't know how many dwarfs there are in the country, but X amount of dwarfs in the country. It's just like, no.
Yeah. It is crazy. Switching topics a little bit, what was growing up like for you? What was that journey like? Because I can imagine it was. I would guess it was fairly okay when you were younger, and it got more challenging as you got older. But I'm making an assumption there. I may be completely wrong.
You are so right. That is exactly the case. I had a really lovely childhood. I grew up with two parents who were married, and I was at their wedding. Caused chaos there. I think they regret inviting me. No, I'm joking. My mum purposely waited until we were of age to attend that wedding.
Yeah.
I've got a brother who's 33. And yeah, he was an amazing sibling. We very rarely fought. We got along. He helped me out where I needed it. Yeah, very lovely family as a whole. I had a good group of friends at school, like primary school. But I think as soon as I hit secondary school and as soon as you start going through puberty and finding yourself, God, that term annoys me, but it's the only term that I can use. When you're sort of 12, 13, you're figuring out, right, I like this, I don't like this, but I have to like this to fit in with somebody. For me, I felt like I had to like something to make up for the fact that I was different, which is so ridiculous. So I did that for a while, and that made me really unhappy until I got to basically the whole of my teenage years. I fought this identity of I've got to be like the popular kids so that people forget I'm small.
Yep.
Yeah. It's so silly.
I can relate to that so much. Like I did the exact same thing, and I always say whenever I speak to people that are young, give me that get away from this whole thing that you need to be in with the popular crew. If that's where you fit, perfect, great, happy days. I'm happy for you, but don't force a square into a round hole. No. It doesn't work. And I have to say, as soon as I stepped away from that, I was like 200% happier. But then as 13-year-old Charlie would probably tell you, I didn't have the social intelligence to know that at that time. So that's why I always try and share that with younger people with disabilities, because I feel like you fall into that trap all the time, because as you say, you're different to everyone else.
Yeah.
So you feel that you have to bring something extra to the game. Like for me, I was the sarcastic, loud one that no one really disagreed with. Like no one I didn't have anyone that disliked me or anything like that, but I never felt like I fit, if that makes sense. And it was really weird because everyone's like, "Oh, but you're so liked," and I'm like, I'm liked, but I don't have a circle or close friends that I can go to. It was just kind of people. It was more. I had loads of acquaintances, but no one really close. If that makes sense.
Yeah. No, I
But
completely
yeah, I
get that.
completely feel the pain of trying to get in with the popular crew and trying to blend, it almost be a chameleon and fit to what they want rather than who you are.
Yeah, and I think my parents noticed that as well. They kept telling me, but being the stubborn, loud. I think I was loud in school for a couple of years, and then that died down pretty quickly. First of all, I was like, no, I'm going to fight until I get into this group to prove social status. It's always social status, and that is from what you wear to what bag you carry to how you act, what music you like. I was listening to music that I absolutely hated, but forcing myself to like say I enjoy it, so I wasn't like bullied or
Ostracized. Yeah.
ostracized in that sense. Because as soon as I started doing that, I was ostracized.
Yep.
I was like, whoa. Even more so because I stood out.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, I'm just in your class for 6 hours. Because most of them I was in the same class as. I won't see you when I get home, so what's this issue?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's mad, and then you get older, and then you realise, like, I've got friends that we're on completely different end of the spectrums, but there's certain elements that we click on, certain elements we don't. But there's not. I feel like when you're younger, there's almost that like pressure to conform to what you have to almost always agree. You can't disagree.
No.
Like you can't go. Actually, I don't believe in that system.
And I found like forcing myself into that group, I wasted my potential on making real friends. So I ignored all the people that I could have been friends with up until year 9 to year 12. Like I found my best mate in year 12, and we had been going to school together since year 7 because I let go of chasing that popularity. I went up to her. I was like, I've been meaning to say this for years. I'm sorry I haven't, but I love the bag that you're wearing. Like, just started over a bag, and then it was like this cool sort of tote bag that I loved, but I wouldn't admit that I liked. And I just said it, and we've been best mates since. It was like
I completely relate to that. I had pretty much the exact same story of got to year 9, realised that this isn't for me, and also it wasn't helped that in my school, in my secondary school, you were almost like split into, like that traditional thing of split into houses when you did sports day. So that was my school all the time. So you had the yellow block, the blue block, the green block, and the red block. But until you hit year 9, you didn't mix. You were kind of in your blocks. And then we got to year 9 and mixed. And I have a really funny story of how me and my best friend became friends. So originally he hated me because we were playing softball in PE, and obviously teachers wanting to be inclusive, they're like, right, we'll set Charlie up to bowl, and we'll get him to bowl a couple of balls in. But obviously I'm lower and also have less, I can get less power behind the ball. So I bowled this ball, and it's about waist height to the guy that I'm bowling to. And he's hit this ball. I sort of had to make an effort to hit it, but it's hit it, and it's hit me square in the face. And the worst thing is, so he's now thinking, I didn't want to bat. I knew this was going to be a problem, but the teacher said that I had to do it, so I did it. And then I look terrible because I've just smashed the disabled kid in the face with the softball ball. And then we got chucked into a drama class together. got made to do a slapstick scene together, and then that was it. We just bonded over that, and we've been friends ever since.
It's amazing how it all works, and it was my friend and I now didn't like each other for 5 whole years. Like we're like daggers across the classroom kind of thing. And that one moment is, yeah, you've got your friend for life, and all it takes is that one moment.
Yeah. But it also shows you as well that difference in personalities can be a massive benefit as well, because it can make you see stuff through a completely different lens. Like sometimes friends will come out with stuff and I'm like, I've never thought about it like that. And you're like, no, I feel really dumb for not thinking about that. But thanks. Thanks for showing me that.
I think I tell my friends every day that they give me a new perspective on life. Like, it's impossible for me to be friends with somebody that is the exact same.
Yeah.
Because that's where you start like arguing. But each one is different in a variety of ways, and it's great. Like, we haven't all followed the same path. We all date like different types of people. And when we all get together, you've got lots to talk about. It's not stagnant ever, and that is true friendship.
Yeah, completely. And that is also then gets rid of those weird, awkward silences. But then also I think there's something to be said about that as well, of like being comfortable in the silence. And that sounds really weird to say, but like I always feel like some friendship groups, you watch them and it's almost like someone's always got to be saying something.
Yeah.
It's weird. It is weird. We've gone on a very big friendship tangent, educating the older generation on how not to make the mistakes that we made.
No, but that's what kids need as well, and adults. Like, you're constantly learning in life, so.
Yeah. And I think as well, there's an element of when you've got a disability or a difference, you also become a little bit more socially mature and socially aware before your peers do. So it can take you a while to catch up or for them to catch up. Or you'll find what I find now, like I've got some solid friends that I've got from school, but then a lot of friends that I've made since I've left school are much older than me, or like a few years older or much older, but we get on as if we're the same age. It's really strange.
Yeah. Did you find that when you were younger, like as a kid, it was easier to talk to adults than it was to children your age?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. It's weird. I think mine comes from obviously not being able to do the whole running round playing thing. Like I was always the one that was stuck at a table and having to figure out an adult conversation of where you could almost chip in.
Yeah. So obviously my cousin's idea of fun, I grew up with 2 cousins at the same age, was running around like a soft play area, which is impossible to do when you're 3 foot something of that age and you're climbing up ladders. Like, I haven't got 2 arms to do that. I've physically got 2 arms, but this arm doesn't work. And after a while, I ended up just sitting with the adults, and I did the same thing. I'd sit there and be like, okay, I've got 30 seconds until I can chip in, and I would plan what I would say.
Yep. And then also as well, I found that and then you got slightly older, and then you sat there and now like not so much your close family members, but like you'd be sat there with like your parents' friends, and you'd say something, and they're like, "How old is he?" or "How old is she?"
Yes.
Like, yeah, it was really weird. Like you're just thinking, "What?" I just listened.
You pick up their words, you pick up sort of their terminology, and sorry, I'm going off on a tangent, but because I did that so much, spent time with adults.
Yep.
I ended up ordering fillet steak at my dad's 40th birthday.
Yeah.
At the age of 9. Like, what 9-year-old eats fillet steak? And his boss turned around and said, "How old is your child?"
Yep. I have a very similar story. So we went, so my family used to have a place in Spain, and one year we drove to the place, and we've got some friends that have a place in France. We met up together. They're my parents' older friends. It's basically my dad's like mentor. Anyway, gone out for dinner, and he's like, "Oh, we'll take you out to this nice restaurant." Blah blah blah. I'm 6, yeah, I'm 6, and they've come around to this with these menus, and then they put the kids menu in front of me, and I'm like, "Nope." Mum's looking at me like, "Yeah, okay, knew that was going to happen."
Yeah.
Anyway, gives me the normal menu, and then goes, "Right, Charlie, what do you want?" And bear in mind, I know this is like the most poncy thing a 6-year-old could ever say, but I've turned around and gone, "Yeah, can I get the pate to start, please? And then can I get the fillet steak?" And
What's that mean?
and then the worst thing was, so my dad's like mentor is like, "Shit, I'm gonna pay for this," and also he's a 6-year-old, he better bloody eat it. And then Mum's looking at me. Mum knows full well that I'm gonna clear it, and I cleared. So I cleared mine, my start on my main. I had dessert, but in between that, I finished my dad's mentors, my mum's, and my sister's.
I think that's the best story I've ever heard.
And Charlie, funny enough, he's called Charlie as well. Charlie just sat there in amazement. This tiny little 6-year-old had just cleared about 4 plates without flinching, and continues to just chat away with the adults at the table.
It's actually wild how much you mature, I think, having
Yeah,
a disability, especially because you
yeah,
have to adapt quite quickly to any situation. So it makes you
yeah,
good with any situation.
yeah. I think
Yeah.
it's also to do with for me. I don't know about you, but it was also being like, obviously having to ask for support. You kind of just had to be open enough to put your hand up and go, "I can't do that. So can someone help me, please?"
Yeah. Which is something I wish I did a lot earlier, because
Yeah,
I had a chip on my shoulder between those ages of 13 and 17. But now I
yeah,
would quite happily ask my boyfriend to do anything for me.
yep, same.
Like,
Gee, the boundaries completely disappeared with me and my other half.
yeah,
I'm
same here.
like, Gina, it's quicker for you to do it. Just do it. Just do it.
Well, the guy does about 60% of my life, I
Yep,
think.
yep,
Because once I met him, I finally got over that chip of asking. Like, I didn't even
yep.
think about it. But before
Yeah,
that,
I think as well, it's different with your partners. I think there's a level of like, because obviously with intimacy and everything else, like most of the boundaries that you don't ever get to cross with anyone else get crossed very quickly, and it's like, okay, well, you've seen everything now, so there's not really much I can hide.
no,
So
that's
crack
exactly how I
on.
look at it. Exactly.
Yeah,
I'm like,
it's weird, isn't it? It's weird, isn't it? Because like, I think like you only have that really if with family members because you knew you needed it when you were younger, and then in that in between bit, there's kind of no one you can lean on in that way of like, if shit really happened,
yeah.
what am I gonna do?
Like, I decided to go to uni 2 hours away by myself. So I went from my parents helping me with mostly everything to nothing. I don't know why I made that decision. I think I was young, dumb, and just wild. Like, I was raring to go as soon as I could because I felt like I had to prove something.
Yep,
Like,
yep,
going away for me was proving something, although it wasn't really. So I did that, and then I moved to a guy, and I had to help again, and I realised, like, it's okay.
yeah,
It's really okay to ask for it. Like, you're saving your time, you're saving other people's time. And now it's quite funny because we were at a convention the other week, and my parents were there. And when I need help with something, they all turn around and they try and race to help me.
yep, yep.
So it's like,
Do you know the
carry on.
the weirdest thing for me is the fact that obviously I, very similar to you, kind of in that in between bit, tried to avoid getting any help, tried to sort of lean away from it. So then almost my parents didn't know the new way to help me. So I
Yeah.
often found that like Gina would jump into something, they'd be moaning like, oh, we did this for like 15, 16, 18 years before you arrived, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, I'm going to go for it. And I'm like, no, it's because Gina, also the other benefit is, no offense to my parents, Gina does it how I want it done. So she knows, okay, Charlie prefers if I support him with this bit, rather than my parents would just be like, oh, this is the way we used to do it when I was 6. And it's like, it's not the same.
Totally relatable. Totally relatable. And I feel like I'm saying that to everything that we say, but like you get it. And it's very rare that I have these conversations. So like that, yeah.
It's weird. It's weird. How long have you and Guy been together?
God, I'm losing track now. It's only been like a year and a half almost. 15 months, 16 months.
Oh wow.
That's like when you ask how somebody's toddler is, and they go, they're 17 months and 5 days. I'm like, what's that in years, please?
Yeah, I don't know. I work with schools, and like they'll say that to me, and even though I've been doing it for years, I'm like, English, please. Like, it doesn't help me to tell me how many months they are. Like, even like when they're like 6-year-olds, you're like, just tell me they're 6 and 5 months.
Yeah,
It's fine. Like,
so we've been together for that amount of time, and I'd say he is my first serious boyfriend. I've had one or two before.
Yep.
That's a long story. So I'm surprised I got this far. How long have you been together?
Me and G, 6 years.
Wow.
Yeah, 6 years.
What's the secret?
It's good question. The secret I would say is communication. I always argue that communication is king. If you've got a problem, spit it out.
Yes.
Because there's no point in doing that whole, I'm just going to have a face like thunder for 3 days. It doesn't help anyone. Go up to them, be like, you did this thing, it really pissed me off, and here's why. And then they go, oh, whoops, my bad. Or they go, well, you did this. And you're like, okay, fair point. Yeah, fair point.
Yeah, and it's good to be called out on actions now and again. Like, it makes you grow as a person.
Yeah. So that would probably be my thing. And I think as well, it's just communication, and also, I don't know, just don't overcomplicate it. I feel like so many people overcomplicate relationships, and I'm like,
they do.
Just, yeah.
Like,
it's weird.
1 + 1. That's it.
Yeah. I mean, I just don't get it, because people go to be like, oh, how do you do it? And I'm like, to be honest, probably the biggest benefit was I had an older sister. So I've got a sister that's 6 years older than me. So I saw her go through hell with boyfriends and stuff, and I'd go, no, I'm not doing that. So that's probably another reason why. So like, I'd probably have that in my back pocket of like, there's a lot of scenarios where I could your average Joe would probably get annoyed, but then I look at it and go, Charlie, let's do a quick analysis. Is it worth the argument? No. All right, leave it alone.
Basically. The day is so much easier.
It is. On the note of like relationships, I'm going to dive into that. You've done some lingerie modeling. You've done a lot in the intimacy space.
Yes.
What's your experience of that been as being someone with short stature? Because it's something that not many people talk about. I think whenever we think of intimacy, people go down the really stupid and ironic intimacy when it comes to people of short stature. Also the same with guys in wheelchairs and girls in wheelchairs. So completely relate to it. But yeah, so what's your experience of it been?
So I never really spoke about it at all. Rarely with friends, and I never spoke about it on the internet until I got the offer to work with Love Honey. Can I mention brands?
Yeah. No, go ahead.
So they approached me. I was like, okay, I'm not sure. I spoke to my parents about it. We're a very open family in that sense.
Same. Yep, same.
We talk about everything and anything. My friends find it weird.
Yep.
I don't.
Yeah, so do mine. Yeah, so do mine, don't worry.
Yeah. And at the same time, my brother got offered a job for a data manager for Love Honey. So we make great conversation at dinner parties.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
So I did that because everybody was telling me, like, you'd be a fool if you didn't, you'd regret it and all this. And I think once you're holding certain items to do with intimacy,
Yeah.
so I'm holding vibrators and stuff, and my grandparents have seen it. And from that point, I think I just gained the confidence to be open, and I realized it was a way to provide other people with a platform
Yeah.
to like educate themselves on sort of sexual happiness, sexual wellness as a disabled person, because every person's different when it comes to sex and all that. And
Yeah.
for me, like, all I got told was like the average height point of view of sex and relationships and intimacy, whether that's like in a long-term relationship or if it's just like a casual situation. That's the only understanding I had. So I think I wanted to give that perspective so that other people can watch it and be like, so we can do it. Which is ridiculous to say.
Yeah.
When I was that person once, I didn't believe I could do it.
Yeah.
So all I had to do was do that, and it was a lot of fun. And then that just spiraled into lingerie modelling, purely because of the fact I was like, okay, I've done this. Why not do this? If I don't like it, yes, it will be on the internet forever, but I can take down those images from my platform.
Yeah, completely.
But it was a big decision to make to move to that side of things. And I primarily moved to that side of things because of being fetishized for free. Like, people were taking my images and putting them on like fetish pages.
Yeah.
Which I had no control over, and that's not why I put those images out. I put those images out for body confidence.
Yep.
Because I grew up seeing average height models in a magazine, or I'd walk into Victoria's Secret and all there was average height models. This was before like plus size was a thing, really, and like petite size was a thing. Like, you just had your average Joe. So that's why I started doing it, really.
I completely agree, and like, it's really interesting that our journeys are quite similar. As I say, often in school you'd have the discussions, and it was kind of like, I don't really know how this is going to work. Like, I always used to joke, like, before I say it, I'm not condoning it, but I always used to joke that I could never do a one night stand because I'd need a fucking handbook to give to the person before we even got involved. And it's like things like that, like being a younger person with a disability, there's so many layers that you have to consider, like logistics. There were so many logistics. So when me and Gina first got together, it was like, what the I didn't even think about this. Like, it's weird. And then, as you say, then you got no one, like, there wasn't really, and that's partly why I started talking about it, because there wasn't anyone that I could go to and be like, can I just get your 2 cents on something? Because people would go, oh, you just do this and do this, and I'm like, yeah, that ain't gonna work.
No, it was exactly the same. Like,
it's strange. I must admit, I didn't expect to find this many things that we had in common on our journeys. So that's really interesting.
Yeah, it is. It's quite amazing.
It is so true in terms of, as you say, doing the work with sex toy brands and stuff like that. It was. I don't know if you've listened to the episodes I've done with Damien Weatherald. So, like, it's really interesting to dive into that with him of being a sex toy specialist that has a disability. But not only that, there's a whole stigma when it comes to disability. No, to be fair, minus the disability of just men and sex toys, because I think it's almost this like alpha energy of people not wanting to give into it because then they feel like they're not doing their part. And then also I think as well it's like not knowing what's out there and what it's not like you can trial stuff. I think that's the worst thing. It's not the sort like understandably so. I completely understand why, but it's not like you can go. Oh, I didn't like that. I'm going to give it back and get my money back. That's not how that works. So, like, whenever you're talking of sex toys and stuff, it's quite a big investment. Of I might not like this, but I'm going to buy it anyway.
And they're not cheap. They are not cheap.
No.
No. I think I don't want to go into a huge amount of detail because I don't know if Guy would kill me or not. But for me,
that's all right.
Like, it's okay to use them as a female, and Guy is in no way not doing his part. I just get tired. I've only got so much energy, and when it gets to 8 p.m. and it's that time, I'm going to nap sometimes. So using those toys helps. And we had to navigate that in the start of our relationship. Like, I had partners before. One was a casual fling, one was a long-term partner before Guy. And it's impossible to do one-night stands. It just doesn't work. But with Guy, it took us, 2 days in the Cotswolds to figure it out. Like,
love it. Right, we're gonna next task for the next 48 hours. We are going to achieve this.
We got no manual. You've never had or never done it with a short person.
Yeah.
And I can relate to this again. To your body because he is muscly as hell. So but he had that patience. He was willing to learn, and he didn't have that ego of she's got to look like something from a movie.
Yeah.
So
it comes back to what I said earlier. It's all come down to communication. It's communication and being able to laugh about stuff. Whenever people ask me about intimacy with a disability, I'm like, just like patience, communication, and just be willing to go, well, that didn't fucking work, did it? No. And move on. Like,
you've got to try, otherwise nothing works in life, and you'll never find out. It does take a good few goes, and I think that's why a lot of people don't watch porn, because it's just unrealistic. So
it's also that was the other thing I found really interesting having the conversation with Damien is also the element when it comes to men and porn and it wasn't until he pointed out you are right, every bit of porn you watch has an element of aggression to it. And you're like, he said it and I went, yeah, you're completely right, that is 100% true.
Yeah, it is. I've only seen snippets. I've never fully watched it. But that is true.
Yeah.
There is a narrative.
It's a bit mind-bending.
Oh, God. Jesus.
Yeah. And then also I feel like anyone with a disability, as you said, is fetishized. So like, it's like, oh, vulnerable person in a wheelchair. Like, it's always really creepy. Why is it like a large amount of porn just creepy?
Yeah. I dread to think what the market is for LPs and short-statured people, like especially short-statured females. Like, about... Not that I'm putting any proper, like, sexual content out there. Like, it's only me in lingerie, but even that gets sexualized. Like, even a bikini gets sexualized. So anything beyond that, I don't even want to research. Because I can imagine what the market is like.
it just freaks me out because it's not only people that are putting content like that out, and they should be able to. They shouldn't. It shouldn't be a problem. Is also people that are doing nothing within or very limited within that space are still getting it, and I'm like, she's just posting a video of how she gets like dressed or something actually practical that might actually help someone.
Yeah.
But you're thinking that it's wow, like weird. There's some strange people out there.
The DMs as well. Like, I had to put my message requests on because I don't have enough hours in the day to sift through them all, and sometimes I don't check them for weeks. So
Yeah.
it's a very weird world out there. Navigating that from the age of 17 online has been a whirlwind.
So what made you dive into, what was the big thing that made you dive into blogging and doing this whole social media space thing? Was it literally just that thing of no one out there representing people of short stature?
Essentially, yes. But then at the same time, I don't know if you were a part of this generation, but you know, like the YouTuber generation.
Oh yeah, that was me. That was me.
Yeah. I think you're a couple of years older than me.
I was that was how NQPC started. We are NQPC Fitness, the YouTube channel. That was how it all started because I was really into the fitness YouTube space. And that was how I got into social media, and then realized that there were too many topics that I wanted to touch on, so I couldn't just do fitness. Plus, as well, there's only so, because as a disabled fitness person, like there's only so many exercises you can do, so the content would get very samey, and it's like, okay, yeah, we need to do something different. And yeah, so I was part of that YouTuber space of let's go get 1 million subs. On that note, please people subscribe.
Nothing like a plug.
But yeah, no, I was completely part of that space. So I completely understand the whole wanting to put your 2 cents in on
Yes.
the YouTube boom.
I was that 14-year-old who tried it at 14, and I tried to do the whole like dress like everybody else thing. I even have like a little vlog channel. I haven't even told Guy this. I've taken it down because it was so embarrassing. It was just like my cousin and I, like, you know, like fucking around on a campsite.
Yeah.
Going crabbing and just silly things that 14-year-olds do. And that, I realised it was like, oh, that's not getting much attention because I'm not using my disability as the focus. I'm trying to act like all my friends do and ignore the fact that I have a disability.
Yep.
So using those two combined, that's how I started blogging. I was 17, so I was a bit more mature. I had an idea that I saw Sinead Burt, who is a fashion blogger. I don't know if you've heard of her.
No, I can't say that I have, I don't think.
She's an LP, like I am.
Yeah.
But she started this like way back in the day when the space was quite small and there was nobody doing it. And now she's working with like Vogue. She works as a design specialist, so she helps like adapt classrooms to enable like disability. Honestly, Google her after this, and I think you'd love it because it's within like our industry. She had that mindset to think, right, nobody's doing this. I'm going to go out and do this, and she's done bloody well. I met her, and then I thought, right, why don't we expand this? I'll cater for the teenage market. I was in sixth form, and at our sixth form, we had to wear clothes. I don't know if you went to sixth form or college or whatever.
Yeah, I was the same. Always felt like the girls got more choice than we did because it was literally, you just wear a suit. That's what you wear, and that's all you have. That's your choice. And it's like, okay, right, great.
Yeah. And dressing myself for sixth form was difficult because I was, by year 9, I got rid of my TAs because of that whole social status thing.
Yeah.
Don't know if you ever found this, but I found that if I had a TA in the classroom, nobody would talk to me because...
Oh, see, I was very lucky. My TA is always very good at integrating into the classroom. So, like, particularly my sixth form TAs and LSAs, like, particularly because I used to have only one or two. So,
Yeah.
like, I built very good bonds with them. Funny enough, funny story, the reason we're called NQPC actually came from one of my teaching assistants.
That's amazing.
I started out as wanting to open a gym, and yeah, she was like, "Do you know what you should call it? Because it's legit you." And she was like, "You should call it not quite politically correct." And then it stuck, and that was it. Then here we are.
It's good to abbreviate as well, as you do. Like you need thinking like
Yep.
when you're trying to brand yourself as like a startup and a content creator, you need to make the name work.
Yep.
And I think I stole mine from my best friend who was joking around with names on like a messenger chat one night. And that's how it was born. Purely struggling for sixth form outfits and wanting to create a market for like a platform for people like me. And
Love that.
if people scroll back, which I don't advise you do, please, for your own sanity and
Yeah,
mine.
please. Yeah, please don't. Same here. Please don't.
Yeah, some of those outfits are really questionable.
Yep.
And the camera quality as well, and whatever graphic design I was doing.
Yep, and don't forget the hair. Oh, for me, it was the beard styles and the hairstyles. It's sixth form Charlie. My thing was turtlenecks and chin strap. Why was that a good idea? I have no idea. But here we are, and that does exist on the internet because I'm a big believer of showing the progression.
That's the only reason why I kept it up there is progression.
Yep.
And just to prove a point that I can grow without actually growing. Like, it's actually tragic. Some of the stuff, like I had a big phase with beanies.
Yep, remember the beanie
hats.
phase. Yep.
And I'm like, why did I do? I was sat in the summer, like in sixth form, with a bubble hat on. Like, no wonder why I was questioned. I questioned, like, how do I get my following from that?
But we do it for fashion.
Yeah.
It's a fashion.
Fashion, and I felt all the time. And to be fair, I think you've got to give props to your younger self. Like, both of us and, like, anybody who's watching this, to make the decisions you made and to be that brave to go out and wear what you wore and do what you did back then.
Yeah, definitely. Like, especially because, like, when I started doing content creation, the amount of people that would give me shit like, "Oh, you want to be a big YouTuber? Who's gonna watch your stuff?" And like, by no stretch of the imagination am I big now, but I feel like when I first started, if someone said to me, "You were gonna be here," I'd have been like, pretty happy with that.
Exactly. I mean, did you find, as you've gone on like through the years, like the way you've expanded, has that happened quite quickly, or was there ever a point where you questioned, like, do I still keep going, or do I?
I think mine has been, it's been very all over the place. Like I switched between fitness and lifestyle very quickly, and then expanding further out has been a bit slower for me. And I think the reason behind that is I don't want to be one of these creators that does the whole, "Oh, look at me, I can make a cup of tea now." I don't want to. No, that's not helping anyone. That's just me getting gratification of, "Oh, look, I can do this thing that I couldn't do before," and there's nothing wrong with that, and it's great. But when people base their accounts on that, it's something that I'm not comfortable with, because then I don't want to be that guy that's like, "Oh, you can cure your disability," because I can't.
It's not real. Like, that's why I don't edit my photos to try and look like I don't make my limbs longer in a photo, or this arm turns outwards, I don't turn it back in. You know. Or I don't share the bits I struggle with.
Yeah, and I think that's the big thing. He's also, because for me, it's all about adding an element of comedy to most of the stuff I do, because
Yeah.
then it's relatable. Because my other big worry, and this is something I'm battling with at the moment, is obviously we've both touched on that our unique selling points are our disabilities, and we create around that. But then someone pointed out to me a little while ago, and it was very true, of the content creation space of disability, while great, it's also very cellular in terms of the content. Realistically, the people that are watching our content are people with disabilities, so we're not actually educating as much as we might hope, because we're not reaching the outside audience. It's almost trying to figure out how we do that to achieve the maximum effect.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to wrap your head around it, because I'm not hating on the disabled community. What I'm saying is most of the time we're preaching to the choir, and it's like, yeah, go on, Charlie, yeah, you're right. But the people that can actually change it aren't us. And
Exactly.
like that's the really tricky thing.
And it's also difficult to do something tastefully,
Yeah,
because you will have people with your disability who have different opinions on the disability that you all have, because
yeah,
nobody is
yeah,
textbook. And it
yep,
is like creating content to make everybody happy as well, and using like the right terms so you don't like being politically correct, so you don't have to upset people, or you get like a big group of people like messaging you, be like, oh, why did you say that? You've done this for us. You've been this bad.
yeah,
So it's quite the thing to navigate. It's not easy.
yeah. And I think one of my biggest things is constantly feeling like the outside world sometimes looks at the disabled community and goes, God, all you guys do is moan. And while, yes, there is an of that, because we can be screaming and shouting about stuff and it will take years for anyone to take notice, there is an element of, I've brought it up several times on the podcast, of saying, are we biting our noses off because people are worried about coming to us to try and teach them, to then allow them to move forward, because they don't know whether we're going to throw a lawsuit at them, whether we're going to get offended, whether we're going to start screaming and shouting, whether we're just going to blank them, go really cold with them. It's a really weird one to navigate, and it's
It
always
is.
the big fear of mine is I want to bring the wider community in, and more of a, oh shit, I've never thought about it that way. That's pretty cool, or that's something that I can help you with. I don't want it to be, oh, how dare you ask me about my sex life. Now, I don't, like, the thing is, like, people get really funny with that, like, oh, but you shouldn't have to tell people. Yes, I shouldn't, but like, it's all about the way it's presented. If I'm at a bar and some dude goes, hey, yo, how does it work? It's a bit weird because you haven't even asked my name yet. We haven't chatted. Like, you haven't asked me more of the basic questions of disability. You've gone straight in for the jugular. That's a very different conversation of me having met you a couple of times, or we've been chatting for a few hours, and you're like, I'm really sorry if this is really personal, but can I ask you this, because I've constantly been wondering about it. I'd much rather educate someone rather than isolate them.
Yeah, exactly. And it's about the context. I've had that situation before where it's mostly nightclubs, which I don't
Yeah,
go to anymore because I'm an absolute granny. And
yeah, me neither.
I prefer a night in, or like we discussed the other day, going to the garden centre in the morning.
Yeah, yeah,
It's mostly in nightclubs that these things happen, or I've had it in uni, I've had
yeah.
it living in a flat with 6 other people. Like, if they've brought friends around and they've all got drunk, it's just instantly poof into that. I don't
Yeah.
know. But I got a name.
It's weird. Yeah, it's weird. It's weird because, as I say, I don't mind it so much when it's people that I've been around for a little while, or like we've had a whole discussion of like you've almost brought them on the journey of like they've started with the really basic questions and now they're getting a bit more inquisitive.
Yeah.
That I don't mind so much. It's when it's literally like, I'm just here sipping my beer, having a great time, and Darren's just decided, quick question, we've never spoken before, but can you tell me this? And you're like, Sure.
Like, if you're really that curious, just go and Google it. Don't make it somebody's personality when you've never met them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's the difficult thing as well. It's also judging that, because by nature, once you've had a few conversations with me, you've probably realised that nothing's really off the table. But then if you do that to the wrong person, that's when you're going to get the cold shoulder, the kicking off, you wouldn't ask a normal person that.
Yeah.
And then it turns into this whole thing. And my biggest worry is any situations like that is that people are really naive, and that is the view that they'll view disabled people through of, oh, well, this one time Cait shouted at me and screamed at me and kicked me and this, that, the other. And that's the label that everyone's going to get.
Yeah.
It's like, actually, no, that person was just having a really bad day, or she's just a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
It's very possible.
No, I'm quite boring, if I'm honest. So boring. Like, I don't like confrontation. I just sort of walk away or waddle away. No.
Nothing wrong with that.
Like, I've had people in the street go, do you want to fuck? And like, just walk away.
Yeah.
Walk away.
Yeah, or my personal favourite I used to always get, does it work? And to be honest, I still found this hilarious even to this day. 16-year-old me in sixth form, particularly if it was a female that asked, I'd go, do you want to find out? Complete point blank, without flinching, just to watch them panic.
You've always got to be ready with the shock factor.
Yep.
Always. It's a good weapon.
Always got to be ready, and also always got to be ready for some, like, an answer that they didn't expect. Because I was talking about on another podcast of, like, I realised I'll say something without realising I've said it. Like, for example, a friend at work a few years ago, we'd only just started working together, and she's gone like, oh, I'm going out for lunch, I'm going to go out for a walk, and without thinking, I'm just typing away, and I've gone, oh, yeah, I wouldn't know what that's like. Chuckled to myself and carried on. And she has stopped dead in her tracks, mortified, doesn't know whether to say something or laugh or what to do. And I'm just sat there like, it's fine, you can laugh, it was a joke, I didn't even realise I'd made it, but we're here now.
You've always got to be ready, and there is no point moping about it at all.
No.
And nothing's going to change. Like,
no.
Genetics aren't going to change ever, unless some company want to do it. I mean, there is the option with dwarfism to have an injection to make you taller.
Wait, that exists?
Yeah.
What the hell? Okay.
So, Annie Simmons did a documentary on it.
Shit, I need to go find that. I did not know that existed.
Yeah. So, I think in America, they've developed this drug that you give to children with dwarfism, which is... I'm quite split on my opinion, so I'll round it up at the end. But you give it to them when they're like 5, 6, up until like the age of 12, 13, basically when they stop growing, I think. Yeah. And it forms the cartilage, I think, between the bones to make them taller. Or it gels something together. They grow quicker and they grow taller. But it's only like a couple of inches.
I was going to say, do they like, is it like you go to 5 foot, or, but if it's only a couple of inches, it's like, I don't know. I mean, I'm not in that situation, but I can't imagine it would make too much of a difference.
No. But for me, it was the fact that parents can make that decision for a child so young. Yeah. Yeah. Like, I personally wouldn't have it. And my parents, any surgery I had, asked me the questions, whatever I needed to know about it. And they also made me read the leaflets. I think that's why when you have a disability, you're so mature, because you have to make decisions quite young about your body. Yeah. Without really understanding it. Like, I could barely understand algebra, and I had to make a decision to have my leg broken in 4 places. So for a 6-year-old to decide that they want this growth hormone, which God knows is what it's going to do to their body, it's quite a harrowing experience. And it's currently, I think it's being handed out in like small sort of collections of people.
Is it being trialed out in the States now?
I think so. There's 1 or 2 like English LPs that are doing it. And yeah, it's not something I'd have done ever. But it's each their own, and if the kid understands the needs, go for it. But it's one of these things,
I think
it's the beginning of genetic alteration.
It's really interesting to see that you had a very much included in the conversations when it comes to surgeries. And while I was included in the conversations of the surgeries, it was kind of those decisions were taken, not taken out of my hands because that makes my parents sound really like mean, but like they had the final call.
Yeah, I think any parent does.
Yeah, and I think that's a really tricky thing because I'm all for hearing the young person's voice because, as you say, it impacts their body at the end of the day. But then there is only so much of a decision you can make because, as mature as the individual is,
Yeah,
they are still the age they are. So it's interesting that your parents really included you in that process.
and I think there was one parent on this program, and she was really worried that her son would never find love because he was short. And I think at that point I started crying, and it made me realize how lucky I was to have the set of parents I do, because they never made anything an issue. They always spun it positively.
Yeah.
They never. I think, of course, like any parent will have fears because it is the unknown with a disabled child. Like anything can happen at any moment. They didn't know what my dwarfism would lead to, other than short stature, but it can also lead to a lot of other complications.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's certainly like it's a subjective journey.
Yeah, definitely.
And
Definitely. I think it's also just really hard as for a parent. I imagine it's impossible to make the right decision because there isn't really a right and a wrong way. It's kind of you just got to feel your way through it, really. I guess.
exactly, and knowing, I think, especially with surgeries as well, it's there to enhance their life, give or take, depending on the surgery. Eventually,
Yeah.
there's a lot of surgeries with dwarfism are to enhance your life.
Yeah, the same with CB mostly,
So
and it's also like with me one of the stories I always come back to was like one of the most serious surgery I've had out in the States, where they opened up my spine and cut the nerves that were sending the wrong signals to my brain. In a brief overview, in not very scientific terms, there was obviously a lot more that happened, but that's pretty much it in a nutshell. Woke up from the surgery, I was all floppy and hot, like floppy, couldn't really do much, and my mum's not like it sounds really mean. She's not overly emotive. Like she's not a cuddly person, not a teary person. It's not really her. And I remember waking up from my surgery. She saw me and she burst into tears and went, "I hope I've done the right thing" or something like that. And it's like that as a 12-year-old was quite a whoa. Okay, that's not something you see every day. But then it's also you can't you can only even as a parent you can only make the decisions of the information you've got, and that's why I always say to anyone making a decision, I'm like, you made the best decision you could at the time with the information you had. Like that's all you could have done.
exactly, that is so true. And I actually had a similar experience when I had my leg broken in 4 places. My mum, I had a fixator. You had to turn the screws to straighten my leg.
Yeah.
And you're moving a bone within It was meant to be a month, but my surgeon messed it up. And I gained like 0.1 millimeters of bone growth in 10 days. Or like one, I can't remember the exact measurement, but it was too quick, whatever happened. But my mum had to like physically turn these screws, and she was crying. This woman never cries. I've seen her cry twice in my life. And to know that your parent is having to make that decision to put you through that to better your life is quite harrowing. And parents of children with disabilities don't get enough credit.
No.
And
I think it's very hard as well because oftentimes I think the child can feel almost like a poster boy, and actually, or poster boy, poster girl, and actually a lot of the credit does have to go down to the parents because they have put the building blocks in place for you to get to where you are. Like, it's really weird. Like, everyone comes up to me and goes, "Oh, how are you so confident? How are you so articulate? How do you do this? How does this not bother you?" And I'm like, it's literally just because mum and dad kind of just went, "Shut up and get on with it." That was literally the definition of my parents. It was just like, "Yep, that's it. Move on."
Mine were the same. It was mostly stop squalling, find a way to do it. If you can't, well, you're stuck.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. And that's how I've got the attitude I've got nowadays of get up and go, do it, move 2 hours away from uni. So from home to uni, sorry. If it doesn't work, you can always go back, or you can find a way to make it work. At one point, because my right hand only works, I don't know the correct term for this arm. Basically, it looks like that, and the bone is too long. So I can't turn it, and I can't grip. So to get me to, this sounds really mean, but it was in a good light, to get me to use it to build up strength, I used to tie my right arm behind my back.
That is really old school.
Yeah.
But fair enough.
They are quite old school, and I think that's how I got the attitude, really.
Yeah, fine. Mum and dad are just tying me up to make me work harder. That's absolutely fine.
But I think without that, I wouldn't have started the blog. I wouldn't have been so open to talk about my disability. Once I gained the confidence, I wouldn't have figured out how to speak to adults when I couldn't speak to children because they were running around all over the place. So it all worked out eventually.
Yeah, it always does. Like, that's the thing. Like, everything, I am now a believer of everything happens for a reason.
Yeah.
Although it's funny because I am a crisis planner. So, like, my brain will go, right, we're going to go to the worst possible scenario and build back from there. Whereas, like, traditionally, both my parents are very much like, worry about it when it happens. And I'm like, Mum, we can't be doing that. That's too stressful.
That actually brings me to a question. Do you find that when you need to get anywhere, you have your whole day planned from like the moment you get out of bed to the moment you get on that train or whatever, it is broken down in like 10-minute increments?
Yep.
It's not just me
completely. Nope. And also, I always have a oh shit time. So, like, I will tend to be there 15 minutes before, just in case something happens. So I fall over, this happens, my wheelchair rolls over. Like, I'm always early. I hate being late. I think that comes from school because of being the guy in the wheelchair. Like, you couldn't like sneak into a class if you were late. It was a whole thing. So there's an element of that. We've always been early, but then it's also for my anxiety of like, nope, everything must work. Everything's planned to a T. I know what time I'm going to arrive. I've got a plan B, C, D, and F all lined up.
Yes.
And yeah, so that is me all over.
Oh, it annoys guys so much because I've always done it. And then when we're together...
I'm quite... Go on.
It stresses him out. He's got Asperger's and ADHD, which is a right cocktail in that situation.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, I can imagine.
You've got a dwarf who is just about functioning physically. And then we're both like shouting at each other, like, no, we need to leave 15 minutes early. And he's like, no, it's fine. You can leave now. You'll get there in 5 minutes. I'm like, no. What if, I don't know, my ankle snags because I've got a plate in my ankle and it will snag at any point and I'll drop to the floor. Like, what if the traffic lights don't move quick enough? What if I can't reach the button? I need to leave 15 minutes early so I can plan in case something happens.
Yeah, I am the exact same. But I suppose the thing is, Gina likes a plan, so we're very lucky that we're very similar in that respect. But she has the timekeeping skills of a 4-year-old. Like, it is just it's a bit of a family trait of her family. They're interesting, but love them to bits. But we are very different. Like my family are very like, we're military precision. If mum says we need to be there, we will be there at that time, and that's the time. And like, we're that family. We're outside 3 minutes before the Uber arrives.
That is me. That is me.
I'm ready. Yep.
Although my parents are the exact opposites. They are horizontal. They'll need to be somewhere in 3 minutes, and they'll be putting their shoes on 30 seconds before. Whereas I'm like, no.
Yep. Causes unnecessary anxiety. You're sitting there going, come on, Mum, come on.
Yeah, I do a lot. I'm walking anxiety. I think it's just survival, though, isn't it? It's like a survival instinct, because you know when the world's not made for you, you need to plan.
Yeah. We need to plan, and also we hate being inconvenient to everyone else because we've been labelled as an inconvenience our entire lives by society.
Yeah.
And that's the other issue of, like, we don't want to be the one that's making everyone late or making everyone slow, so we will do everything within our power to make sure we're ahead of the game.
Yeah. Another question. Going back to, like, relationships, and you were talking about, like, Gina's family and your in-laws. Like, how did you find with the in-laws, like meeting the in-laws?
See, I was extremely lucky. Gina's mum and dad were very accepting, but never been exposed to someone with a disability before at that extent. But they were very much like, we're going to roll with the punches. They took a very traditional view of like, if Gina's happy, we're happy.
Yeah.
And they've sort of learned and grown with us, and they've learned to know what I can't do, what considerations I need. So they are extremely considerate. And I think one of the funniest things is I had that classic thing of being terrified of meeting the dad, and was like, oh shit, like as the boyfriend you're like, oh Jesus. And particularly as well because mine and Gina's parents are very different. Gina's are a lot more old school, whereas mine are a little bit more happy-go-lucky. They're a bit off the wall, a bit like you never know what's going to come out of their mouth next.
Mine are the same, and that mixed with my father-in-law scares the hell out of me.
Yep, same. So I get on really, really well with Gina's dad, and he kind of he really by Gina's own admission, he's like, he loves having you about. You just make him giggle. So I'm like, clearly I've done that right. But one of my favourite stories of one of the only times, I think only 3 times our parents have met, because Gina's based in Birmingham, I'm down in London. My family are Irish, so we're quite big drinkers. We like a drink. Gina's family also like a drink, but like at a much slower pace.
Mm-hmm.
And I just remember watching my dad slowly fill Gina's dad's glass up with more and more red wine. And I'm going, Dad, like, just slow down. But the funniest thing about it is he's normally, like, Gina's dad's quite shy around new people. But because of the wine, he'd loosened up and was just telling stories, and it was great. But I do remember saying to my parents, like, my dad's a builder, particularly my dad. My mum doesn't really do it, but my dad, every other word, fuck this, fuck that, and it's and I'm like, Dad, stop, please, don't stop, just bring it down a tad, just a tiny bit. So I end up having a word. Yeah. End up having a word and just saying, look, just down a little bit, and it didn't last long.
He's not a builder, he's a bike mechanic, so different thing, but same attitude, and he loves a bottle of red wine.
Yep.
And we came up here. I live with Guy now. I have done so for like a year. Really? Yeah. And my father-in-law turned up out of nowhere, just came over out of the blue because he knew my parents were here. I don't know if my dad had drank at that point. I think he might have been like a glass of wine in. I was like, Dad, don't say anything, Just say hello, be normal. Because like me, he has no filter.
Yeah. To be fair, my dad is pretty good. Like, my dad, the swearing's a different thing. My dad is one of the people, like, everyone leaves family parties of mine. Like, my friends will come around and go, your dad's wicked. And I'm like, the only reason you're saying that is because he's the first one on the dance floor and then gets everyone up with him. Yeah. That is just what dad does.
It's my dad as well.
Yep. Still, one of my favourite stories of my dad is he's probably not going to enjoy this being out on the internet. Is him so we had a family gathering for my birthday, friends over, family over, mixed bag. Anyway, so I'm sat with my friends, and my friends, being the weirdos that they are, decided they were going to bring around this jumper that was covered in geese. Like, it was a really garish jumper. My friend found it in a charity shop. Thought it'd be funny to make everyone wear it. And so she made everyone wear it. Then my dad's come over like, what's going on? Bear in mind, my dad, I have a very diverse friendship group, and he's like, your friends are a bit weird, but I'm gonna do my best. He comes, so I'm like, oh, what's this? Oh yeah, we're just putting it on for a laugh and all this. He puts on the jacket, he puts on the jumper. Bear in mind, he's like 6'1", and then he starts telling us about how when he's had a few drinks, his alter ego Sharon comes out, and I'm like, I'm listening to this, and I'm going, what? This is the first I've heard of this. And that was the rest of the evening. But yeah, no, I literally, with my dad, more so my dad than anyone else, the stuff that they come out with. My dad and my aunts and uncles, they're the bit more of live wires. My mum's a bit more subdued and a little bit more regulated.
Yeah.
It's probably the right word.
I think our dads would get on if we put them in the same room.
Yeah. I mean, prime example, to give you a brief, really like snapshot of how bad my parents can be. And actually not my parents, my family. One of the first questions my aunt asked asked Gina when they first met was, is he any good?
Or just straight out?
Yep.
Straight out? Jeez.
Yep, straight out the gate. Straight out the gate. So that's what I deal with on a daily basis.
And that sounds very similar to my upbringing.
Yep.
Yeah.
Families are strange, but although I am very conscious of time, because you're probably thinking I'm starving, I was just going to shoot you with the last question, which is, as everyone knows, what's one piece of politically correctness that you really strongly agree with or disagree with?
Oh my gosh. There's so many. Too many.
What's one of your biggest bugbears of someone of short stature?
Bugbears?
Yeah.
Somebody with short stature?
Yeah, so like, what's one, like, for me it would be that everyone goes, is your disability contagious? No.
Oh, okay, I get it now. Always, every time I say, oh, I've got chondroplasia, were you born this small? And they'll literally put their fingers like that. Every time. That's the first thing people will come out with, either before or after the sex thing.
Is, were you born tiny?
Yeah, I'm like, no, I was actually heavier than my brother. And you wouldn't be able to tell I was small until I was about a year old.
Yeah. I can imagine that's really frustrating. Like, it's one of them ones where people don't actually think about what they said. Like, my equivalent of that one has to be, and I haven't been asked this several times, but it's still the funniest thing I've ever had said to me, which is, if me and Gina have kids, will they come out in wheelchairs?
That is.
And I'm just sat there like, yeah, there's Pepper Potts over there that just generates steel out of a body.
It sounds like something that comes up in a movie, doesn't it, when people ask these questions? But it is genuinely real and stark and shocking.
Yep.
Yep.
But I completely get that. But on that note, where can people find you if they want to follow you, what you're up to? It's your opportunity to plug.
They can find me on Instagram at a slice of Cait, like a slice of cake, but Cait is there. And TikTok. What is the rules on plugging OnlyFans?
Go for it if you want to.
OnlyFans as well, you know, if you want to give me a wage. Need to earn money somehow. Because degrees don't pay money, they put you 80 grand in debt. So if you want to go follow that for some content, same as I do on Instagram, but you just get 30 photos instead, go for it. I have
You're, I think, the first person to plug OnlyFans, so there you go. That's a first.
You've got to adapt, haven't you?
Adapt and overcome.
Yeah.
That's the saying.
That's my whole life motto. Although
I couldn't bring Gina
crawling underneath the bench because I can't overcome the bench.
Love that. But thank you so much for coming on. It's been an absolute pleasure, and it's also been really interesting to see how many commonalities we have as well. So that's been really interesting.
Yeah. Thank you so much. It's been wonderful.
Thank you so much for tuning into this week's episode of the Not Quite Podcast. Please make sure you follow us on TikTok and Instagram to get regular updates about the podcast.
These my dollars make it hurt.